Welcome to Queer Things Radio, coming to you live from KFUG Community Radio, Crescent City, California, at 101.1 FM and streaming at kfugradio.org. I'm Tom, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Avi
and Kobi.
Welcome, everybody.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay, yay.
Yay. And just so you know, you can email us at queerthingsradio@gmail.com. And you can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Facebook is facebook.com/queerthingsradio.
You're just going to hear snaps kind of intermittently.
Today, we'll be using TDOR as a focal point for talking about much more about the transgender, gender non-binary, gender non-conforming, and gender queer community. TDOR is short for Transgender Day of Remembrance. And
so we should probably put a disclaimer. This episode is going to be maybe a little heavier than our past ones. And so we're going to be intermittently kind of bringing some trans positivity because, so we're obviously going to get in the history because we've got like a fun order to this show. And the history is based in like a lot of hatred and violence towards the trans community.
So yeah, this week we're going to be kind of talking about and dealing with some like trans violence and stuff against trans folks that may be a little bit heavy to for some listeners. So if you know that's something that you're not particularly good with, it might be smart to maybe sit this one out if trans violence and violence against trans folks isn't your, I'm not going to say cup of tea because I don't think it's a good cup of tea to have, but if that's disturbing and not okay for you, then yeah, this episode might be a little heavy.
Yeah, take care of yourselves.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Always take care of yourself.
Do we want to do announcements before we get into it?
Yes. Also, so we're going to be basically also intermittently vibe checking each other. If we start talking about too much negativity, we're just going to switch it to something
vibe check
better and then come back to that.
Yeah. Because it's an important thing to talk about, and the truth should not be ignored because it's a heavy topic, but it's stuff that has happened.
It's the dichotomy of our community. We want to be positive and happy and out there, but we're being killed.
So yeah. So if we want to do announcements.
Yeah. So first we got the next Rainbow Gathering for November. This will be Saturday, November 16th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Wild River Pizza in Brookings. It's pizza night with the gays.
Heck yeah.
Definitely pizza night.
Pizza night. It's good stuff, all ages, all orientations, all genders.
Yeah, and if anybody's concerned about pizza night not being difficult because they are low on funds, we'll definitely help people make sure they get some food and supply some hors d'oeuvres or something so that people can feel part of this even if they don't have the kind of funds to throw out on a Saturday night.
That's wonderful. Yay.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Also, Wild River Pizza is really good. So
that's good stuff. Yeah. They cut their pizza fun.
I've been told
they cut their pizza in
really
fun
good.
Diamonds.
In diamonds?
Yeah, they cut them weird. The big party pizzas, they cut them into weird shapes.
Fun little diamonds. The whole family can share.
The whole family.
Another fun one is Saga, the Sexuality and Gender Alliance, a new club at College of the Redwoods. Unfortunately, only college students can join, but it is a safe space on campus. We are meeting 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. each Wednesday. At the moment, we are trying to find a constant meeting place. So if you are looking for more information, message our Facebook page, and I will get back to you because I'm also the president of that.
Which is with message the Queer Things Radio Facebook?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can direct you and tell you what's up. And yeah, other announcements, YouTube and Facebook, check those out. YouTube's where you can find these afterwards, so maybe something wild happens while you're listening and you miss a funny joke.
You just gotta hear that joke again.
You just gotta
go back.
And then our Facebook just kind of has all our stuff.
Queer Things Radio.
That's where all our cloud is stored.
Do you want to mention Gender Talk?
Gender Talk as well. That was going to be for the last bit.
Sorry, never mind.
But that's also a resource. We're going to come back to resources. But thank you for your enthusiasm. And the last, I think, big announcement, unless anyone else has other stuff, we are going to actually host a day, an event for Trans Day of Remembrance. We should also mention that is the 20th. We are just talking about it because it needs to be talked about, and you usually don't hear much about it. So that is still a lot in planning, but it is being planned. At the moment, we're thinking of having it at the Methodist Church, and hopefully we'll just have I was going to say a nice time, but we will be holding a candlelit vigil.
And a meaningful time.
A meaningful time. Yeah.
Thank you. And
yeah,
so,
we can keep you updated with what's going on with that, and just kind of any new updates.
Yeah, follow our Facebook for more info on that. We'll probably make an event thing. You know, Facebook has their fun event page.
You know how Facebook do.
And we're 10 minutes in, so we got to keep going. November Pride. November 8th is also Intersex Day of Remembrance. Shout out to that. And then the 20th is Trans Day of Remembrance, and that's the end of the Pride observances.
All right. So we'll just jump in here. So Transgender Day of Remembrance honors the memory of those that have been murdered, which is a real heavy word, because of anti-transgender prejudice. It is recognized annually on November 20th, and it started back in 1999. There was a murder the year before that of a rather well-known trans woman in Boston. Her name was Rita Hester.
And the event was actually started by her friend Gwendolyn Ann Smith. So the date is actually the anniversary of that murder.
Right. And I hate to be so graphic, but these murders are like really egregious, graphic, up close, personal kind of things. It's not like a sharpshooter shooting from a mile away. It's like this woman was stabbed 20 times. That, like, you have to be right there. And I mean, it just shows how much sort of hate and aggression goes into this.
Absolutely.
And why it's so important to bring it to light, you know, even though we don't like talking about the violent part. But that's where it started, and they wanted to honor this person and also bring light to the trans community and how much violence there is against the trans community to help make things better. You know, you can't make things better until people actually know something's going on, and this has always kind of been in the shadows. And that's one reason why this event is so important, is to like bring awareness to what it's like and some of the experiences and difficulties that trans people encounter in their lives just every day. You know, and some of them culminate in horrible acts like this. It's heavy. We got to keep breathing. So if you're out there listening, keep breathing with us.
If you want, I can take away with some information. Sure. I also want to mention Rita Hester was a trans woman of color, and that is a very big thing to keep in mind with most of these attacks. Usually on the lists of names that I read, the majority, I can't come up with a percentage off the top of my head, I won't do that, but the majority are women of color. And that is a very big point in our community we need to note and we need to do something about.
Of the 19 listed so far this year, there's only one that isn't a trans woman of color.
Yeah.
That's pretty big proportion.
Definitely something to take in from that.
Yup.
How we doing?
It's heavy. Let's keep going.
Here's a more fun thing. So in 2010, TDOR was kind of peaking in observation, and it's been increasing ever since. But over 185 cities throughout more than 20 countries observed it. So it was really starting to spread. It's very common for dedicated church services to happen to kind of show a solidarity. There's actually a lot of events that go on. So candlelight vigils are the most popular. There's marches, film screenings, and so a lot is covered. And there was actually a section I found on the article specifically about you see all this on Trans Day of Remembrance, and then it has its own section on transgender women of color, because it is such a big, disproportionate issue.
Yeah.
While TDOR is a critical event, scholars and activists committed to advancing intersectional approaches to trans politics continue to highlight the importance of seeing transphobic violence as inherently connected to race, gender, and class. This is reflected in the disproportionate instances of violence against trans women of color in general, Black and Latina transgender women in particular. There's actually something said by theorists C. Riley Snorton and Jen Haritawarn, who critiqued how oftentimes people will simply celebrate like Trans Day of Remembrance to kind of wipe their hands of blame. So it's kind of that like white, more privileged kind of class that are like, because we're celebrating this, we're the good guys. And that is something to kind of keep in mind when people host these kind of events. Are they doing it to honor the lives, or are they doing it because it's fun publicity for them?
And just to show like, oh, look, we supported, we're so great. Like, look at this.
There's like a real interesting thing in part of that was scholar Sarah Lamble in 2008 argued that TDOR's focus on a collective mourning risks producing the white spectator as innocent of, rather than complicit in, the violence that produces the deaths of trans women of color they are mourning. Lamble states that our task then is to push these further, not only with respect to not only in respect to TDOR, but also in the many ways we recount and confront violence. None of us are innocent. We must envision practices of remembrance that situate our own positions within the structures of power that authorize violence in the first place. Our task is to move from sympathy to responsibility, from complicity to reflexivity, from witnessing to action. It is not enough to simply honor the memory of the dead. We must transform the practices of the living. I think that's really, an important step that needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
And I mean, it speaks definitely to what you were saying about needing to do something. And
I really love that with as innocent of rather than complicit in the violence.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good, it's a good quote.
Yeah.
And I think that happens all too often in our community. Sort of things get overshadowed by the dominant group, and a lot sort of gets lost. And we've discussed some of that in the past about Stonewall and all in the movies and stuff. Where are those?
The statistics here, yeah.
Thank you.
And we have some fun statistics.
Yeah,
fun in air quotes.
Yeah.
So here's some statistics, and I'll just go through them. Transgender people of color, in particular, are 3 times more likely to be victims of harassment and assault than non-transgender people. 48% of LGBT survivors who reported the violence to police reported incidents of police misconduct. And that's a really important point. There's this whole sort of bringing awareness to that calling the police isn't always the safest thing to do for people. I mean, if you're white and male and you may feel safe, but for so many people, the police are not really safe. And, we see that a lot in Black Lives Matter, people really talking about don't call the police unless it's absolutely necessary. Find some other way to get somebody help. Be there, get some neighbors, friends, anything that can avoid those incidents where just the violence just escalates because the police are involved and they panic and they kill people. And it particularly happens with people of color.
And that's such a terrible thing to have to...
It's kind of awful that that's just something we have to acknowledge.
Yeah, that's... Wow,
Yeah, totally. And as much as we work on training I think there's just this, I don't know, it's like this fear and panic is instilled in the police in their training, that they have to be afraid for their lives. And so their first reaction is like, this person's going to kill me, so I got to stop them. And
it always seems like such a power thing.
Yeah.
Like they're so like craving this power that they're afraid of unarmed citizens, and so they shoot them to death, and then are surprised that there's backlash against that there's consequences.
Right. And they're very,
and people defend them because they're infallible.
Because they're the cops. They're here to protect us. And that's the thing. I've never experienced police violence and stuff because I'm white, and I don't think I don't think particularly in this community there's a lot of police violence against white people. Not that there is a lot anywhere, but it's hard for me to imagine a situation where I feel like that I'm in danger and I don't feel like I can call the cops. That's just my own experience, and that's my own privilege of being a white person. I always feel I can just call the cops if I need to. Yeah. And that's something that it's hard for me to consider not having that option.
Absolutely. And there are people usually doing that as like the more dangerous option.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So some more. According to the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey, 1/3 of the respondents reported at least one negative experience with a healthcare provider in the last year. 23% of the respondents did not see a healthcare provider when needed because of fear of mistreatment. And that's a huge thing in the community, is people just being more afraid of getting help because they're not going to get good help, or they're going to be hurt in the process, and not getting health care. And that's a real tragedy. Nearly 1 in 10, 9%, respondents were physically attacked in the past year because of being trans. Nearly half of the respondents were sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime, and 1 in 10 were sexually assaulted in the past year. 53% of the black respondents were sexually assaulted in their lifetime, and 13 were sexually assaulted in the last year, and that's compared to 47 and 10. 1 in 10% of those who were out to their immediate family reported that a family member was violent towards them because they were transgender, and 8% were kicked out of the house because they were transgender. And particularly in our youth population, that's a big cause of homelessness. Youth get kicked out, they have no place to go, and then they become targets of other people taking advantage of them. And it's just a whole nother level of this tragedy. 30% of respondents who had a job reported being fired, denied a promotion, or experiencing some other form of mistreatment in the workplace due to their gender identity or expression in the past year. Nearly 1/3, 30% of the respondents have experienced homelessness at some point in their lifetime. More than a quarter, 26% of those who experienced homelessness in the past year avoided staying in a shelter because they feared being mistreated as a transgender person. 7 out of 10 respondents who did stay in a shelter in the past year reported some form of mistreatment, including being harassed, sexually or physically assaulted, or kicked out because of being transgender. More than half, 59% of respondents avoided using a public restroom in the past year because they were afraid of confrontations or other problems that might experience. And that's a big issue. And they get so much backlash and teasing and stuff, but it's really very serious.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Both of us were just nodding as you said that one.
I've been there many times in the past year. Because that's got to be even worse for.
I'm so happy the college has a gender-neutral restroom.
That's
It is really important. So here's a little bit more positive frame. Compared to peers who could not use their chosen name in any context, Transgender youth, ages 15 to 21, young people who could use their name at school, home, work, and with friends experience 71% fewer symptoms of severe depression, 34% decrease in reported thoughts of suicide, and 65% decrease in suicide attempts. And those who had even just one context in which a chosen name or the person's name that they want to use name could be used had 29% decrease in suicidal thoughts. So that's huge. I mean, that's like just that little bit of respect can make such a huge difference, particularly to somebody who's in an environment where they're not getting support. They're not getting reaffirmation of who they are in a positive way. They're just getting over and over and over again misgendered, using the wrong name. And
I guess misgendering is actually a very good point with another part we were talking about TDOR. The lists that people read are probably much shorter than the reality, simply because many people aren't, I guess, recognized as trans. They just kind of call them their dead name and their old identity and kind of erase all of that, and so they're not really broadcasted.
Which is so disrespectful. It makes me so angry. That makes me so incredibly angry.
Just before we started recording, Avi and I were talking, like, before our name changes, and since I'm still in the process of, like, the paperwork of mine, like, if I were to die, I would be given, like, my old name on the tombstone, and I can't let that happen. So if anyone sees that, burn it.
If you come across a tombstone. Yeah, that's just... Yeah, but like before I legally changed my name and gender, the idea that I would be buried under my dead name is, I don't have a terribly bad relationship with my dead name, because I didn't hate it. It just wasn't me anymore.
Yeah, and for me, it's like changing the spelling and then the rest of my family name and middle name.
Yeah, but just the idea that I would be buried under that and people wouldn't know. That is a weird thing for me to think about, is someone would come across that and go, oh, look, she's buried here. And that is such a bad thing for me to think about. And that's just just the disrespect and the not even knowing about it. That gets to me just thinking about that. Yeah. Sorry to, again, heavy notes.
Oh, no, same. I'm just...
It's okay. I mean, and I think what happens sometimes when police are investigating a murder or an incident, and somebody hasn't changed their name officially, and they go into their wallet and, they see the dead name and gender, and even though like people come forward and say, no, that's not the person's, that's not how they identified, that's not their name. A lot of times it just goes through the whole legal proceeding and in the wrong gender, the wrong name. And it's so like incredibly disrespectful.
Yep.
Really
boy.
Do we want to move to something positive?
Maybe some positive, maybe some happier ones, because it's
we can return to these, but
definitely.
One thing that's very important is media representation, and we've talked about this before with it, like our previous episodes, with just how important that is. And so we have like a few examples, and like depending on how deep we want to talk into each one, but just various characters who like are just proudly trans and like make people feel like secure in like being trans and recognize like trans people exist and all of those fun things. I have a big list. Avi, do you want to start?
I can start with my first one. I know I've talked about this character before on the show because I love her and the show's really good. It's Nomi from Sense8, which is a Netflix original, and Netflix does some very good original shows, and it's written and directed, I believe, by the Wachowski sisters, so it's really well written and well directed, and it's an interesting concept. But one of the main characters is Nomi Marks, who is this trans woman who and they go into her backstory and her kind of like and her childhood and her transition, but they don't focus on that. That's not the main part of her character. She's this hacker, and she's got a whole other life that they focus on, which is, I really like when they do that. It's not just, oh, look, this person's trans. Isn't that great? We do so good on representation. Look at us. We're so good.
Trans pedestal. Look upon her.
We're doing so good, guys. But yeah, she's a really interesting character, and like hearing the statistics about using the right name and pronoun and stuff, and that reminded me of a bit in the show where her whole family or her parents aren't super supportive and are actively terrible and kind of dead naming her the whole time, and it's really just kind of ugh. But she's giving a toast at her sister's wedding, and her sister is more supportive and a lot more loving and appreciative and accepting, and she's telling a story about when after she kind of came out of her gender reassignment surgery, and she woke up and her sister was sitting on the bed with a cupcake with a candle in it, and she was singing "Happy Birthday, Nomi," and that just, I thought about that, and that made me really happy. It was a very sweet bit of just her sister like just appreciating, accepting, and like wanting to just actively help in that and show that she was loved. It was beautiful. Continue, Kobi. It was a good scene. Good. It made me happy.
Thank you. Snaps all around.
Snaps to that, if you would like to start. Yeah.
All right, so I'm about to go off. So this is like less known media. This is a podcast, The Adventure Zone. It's a Dungeons and Dragons role-playing...
Nerd.
Avi introduced me to this podcast, which is the irony of that. We listened to it together. Anyways, by the McElroy brothers, they're just very good and like woke and aware people.
Yeah,
they're three privileged straight white men, and they know it, and they drag themselves for it, and act on trying to make their content diverse. And there's a very important character named Loop. I don't believe she has a last name.
She doesn't.
She is a trans woman, and they say that once in the whole like series. That's like part of her introductions. Like she's a trans woman, and that's like a comma, and then there's more stuff.
Yeah,
her character is not built on that, and her character like defies pretty much every like trans trope. There's a lot in like the fandom and the fan surrounding that, you know, kind of mess things up.
The way they draw her can be very weird and very kind of trans-misogynistic and bad, and yeah.
But all in the original content, they do just so well in presenting her. Like trans characters do not get happy endings. Trans characters like are always struggling and tragic. It is always tragic. It is always like a pain, a burden. But like not once is that the case for her. She's proudly trans, and she has like so much going on. She is an incredibly skilled wizard with a brother who loves her more than anything. You know, she has family. The rest of their family is cut off, but that's like for other reasons besides like, oh, her brother is also very gay. And so like other than like being excuse me, they're not like kicked out of their family for being queer. They're just like proudly themselves. It's like other things. She has the most beautiful love story.
That really got me. Yeah.
Which is not something that happens regularly. And like her being trans does not come up as like an obstacle, or
it's not something
like
they have to overcome to be in love. No,
they're just like her and this character Barry are just so in love, and it's like so good, with like one of the most beautiful monologues that like I've ever heard, which I could read right now. I have it, but I won't go that deep into it. And yeah, and like so something bad happens and she's like trapped for a bit, and that's just kind of a thing. And then when she comes back, she's like this helpful force, and like she gets a lot of things moving in the plot. She is like a very actionable, powerful character, and she survives like the apocalypse that's like going on, and she is just so good.
The McRae said, "Unbury your gaze."
They also literally did that. And that's another.
Yeah, because Griffin, earlier in the podcast, two characters.
The Dungeon Master.
Griffin McElroy, the Dungeon Master who runs the game. Two queer characters died in the story, and not because they were queer and not because they were together. It was just that was how the story narrative was going. And then after that arc ended, people pointed out to him, "Hey, Griffin, that's not a great art like trope."
That follows the bury your gaze trope. Which, granted, he did not know about that.
No, and then
the second he found out that was something that existed. He was, I'll fix this, and then they come back as immortal.
In the finale, they're they're dryads. They're like tree people. It's very good, but yeah.
I don't want to say tree people. I wanted to be true to my roots.
Yeah, hey, nicely done. But yeah, just they do queer characters very well. And anybody else? I have another one if it helps.
I have a big list, and the others will be like less long. That was just my big one.
Can I go in depth about one character real quick? Unless you have anything. I'm sorry, we're kind of...
It's great hearing about all these people. I mean, because I have no clue.
That's fair.
Sorry.
It's nice to hear so much is going on.
I heard about this actor. I believe his name's Elliot Fletcher. I'm going to check that real quick because I want to make sure I'm representing him well. I heard about him. He's a trans man, and he like, got into acting after he transitioned. And I was like, oh, cool, a trans actor. I'm going to watch all the stuff he's in because I need representation. His entire filmography, folks. Yes, it was Elliot Fletcher. And I'm like, I need more trans men representation in my life because I get kind of none of it in media. And so I started watching the show Shameless that he's in, and I'd watched a little bit of Shameless earlier. I know they had a main character who's like going through like his coming out and understanding his sexuality, and I watched bits of that from the earlier seasons, and that was great. I started watching again at like season 7 because that's where the character came in, so I'm like, might as well just jump in. And it was really refreshing. It was really nice. He's not, the way he's introduced is not, look at this trans character. It's this guy, and then you find out, oh, he's trans. Okay, cool. And then that's it. That's kind of it. And it's just, yeah, he's trans. What's up? And he ends up having this romance with the gay character who came out in earlier seasons. And it's just, it's well represented, and it's an accurate kind of portrayal of what a trans guy goes through just in daily life, and it's really good. And he runs a shelter for LGBTQ youth who need a place to stay, and so he's like, you can just see him actively trying to help other trans kids, and it's just very good. And I very much appreciate how they got a trans actor to play this trans character, and it made me really happy.
Just such a rare thing.
It's such a rare thing.
Do you want me to bring up that trope actually? So I have, and I'm going to frame this better because we're in the more positive part of the show, but there's a lot of bad representation. The bad representation heavily like outweighs it in quantity, but then good representation and quality brings it back. So a fun common theme that is in bad representation is cisgender people playing transgender people. The most common of this I've seen, there's this like wiki chart that has like notes on like if this is good or bad. So many said trans woman character played by cisgender male, and that is a big one. And even good representation can have this. There's a character in Dragon Age Inquisition. It's a very popular video game. A trans man named Krim. He is a fun character. Love him. He's presented like really well,
and like proudly out and trans and very cool.
And like the world is like fairly transphobic, and like a lot of his characters also like dealing with that, but that's not like the full part of his character. But he is also voiced by a cisgender woman, which is. You can also imagine, because it's a video game, gamers are awful.
Gamers are not the best.
That's not the first time. Sorry, not the last time I'm going to say this in this episode.
And I think the gamer community also, you pointed this out a bit earlier, does have a lot of
like alt-right
conservative
edgy boys.
Yeah, there's a new female character. They don't need to have women in this game.
Let's be honest, a lot of privileged white men.
Yep.
They buy expensive big gaming consoles because they can, and there's kind of a lot there.
And then get mad if a woman is in a video game and she's not to be sexualized. There's a lot there. Do we want to get into that and how they responded to a video game with a lot of queer characters?
I guess that actually brings me to my next character. So there's a character named Flack, and this is very interesting because it breaks a trope. Flack is a robot in the video game Borderlands 3 and is also non-binary. Now, robots being non-binary is actually another bad trope of just like dehumanizing, but in the series, robots are shown to have numerous genders. There's like very clear male robots, there's very clear female robots, without doing like the gross thing like putting tits on them. Like
robo tits.
Like they just are like, oh, this robot uses she, her. This robot uses he, him. This robot Flack uses they, them. And you can imagine the entire gaming community went wild in the worst ways over that. But it made me so excited for the game, and then I saw the discourse around it, and now I get kind of nauseous thinking about it just because I don't want to be around it, so I'm going to wait till it dies down to play it. But, yeah, and so everything around their character, Flack, is just like... They are presented so well in the game, and then outside of it, it's so much. The team behind the game is very supportive. I actually saw an article just before we started this podcast that they are banning people who intentionally misgender them, which I know the article was written as a complaint, but that filled me with so much glee. Just like, yes,
as it should be. Oh, man.
So I guess a lot of... I was about to swear. Awful alt-right.
Yeah.
and conservative and upper class. I mean, it's all like middle class white boys with their big fancy $2,000 gaming rigs. So it's not surprising
chairs.
They're the worst.
Yeah.
Their gamer chairs that like blow gamer fuel into their veins. When Avi found out recently gamer fuel wasn't a joke and that's an actual product that people sell.
Sorry. It sounds too stupid. I thought it was a joke.
And it wasn't.
Gamer fuel. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Wow.
But yeah, and so Flack, I love them. They are so good.
Hell yeah.
And they just are a robot with a bunch of animals, just a bunch of pets, and they're good.
That's so valid. There's actually a character in a movie that I wanted to talk about in keeping with Trans Day of Remembrance themes. I know it was on your list. Boys Don't Cry. I forget what year it came out.
I got you. 1999.
1999.
And that was actually in my. I had a bigger list of like the common themes of bad representation. This being. Well, I'll let you take that away.
No, yeah. I always forget her name. In this movie, Hilary Swank, that's her name. I remember because she was in $1 Million Baby. I know this one. She plays this. It's a biographical kind of movie about Brandon Tina, who is a trans man growing up in, I forget what state. It was like Minnesota or something. It was
an M.
Midwesty.
The state Midwest.
The state Midwest. And it's a movie about kind of his life and his experiences, and ultimately how he was killed by these two men in his town because of his identity. And and what I wanted to talk about was, I think the movie itself does, I've watched like kind of clips from it, I think it does an okay job in establishing that, like, people ask, oh, aren't you just a lesbian? And he goes, no, I'm not a lesbian, I'm a man, full stop, which is well done movie, pretty solid, pretty good. But the way that the media, specifically in and around 2000, handled this movie was extremely bad and incredibly disrespectful. And I was watching clips about stuff, and it made me really just kind of like, why you're just gonna do that, huh? Like, Hilary Swank won an Oscar for her portrayal of Brandon, and as they announced her name and she was getting up to go and accept her Oscar, and the person over like the big loudspeaker was like announcing the synopsis of the movie, they're like, yes, and Hilary Swank won for her portrayal of Tina Brandon, who was a woman who dressed up like a man. That was basically what they said. They dead named him, and they dead named him, and they completely misgendered him just right there.
Missed the point of the movie.
Missed the point of the whole movie. Yeah. And I think in her speech, Hilary Swank used the correct pronouns and used the correct name, but just kind of the media's handling of everything really just kind of hit home about how, wow, they really are not trying sometimes to actually acknowledge trans people's identities and respect those after they've been, horribly murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I
got
like
on
the
me.
point that you actually made before this of, I was going on about how through that chart of that kind of theme of cis people playing trans people, a lot of cis men playing trans women, and there's also a big reason there's not a lot of cis women playing trans men, because there's no trans men media. They're just not represented. It's awful.
It's awful, and I think there's something to be said there as well for trans women being portrayed by cis men, and how society views trans women.
Like some of the movies that I have on this list, The Danish Girl was in 2015, trans woman played by cis man. Girl, 2018, trans woman played by cis man. Just Charlie, 2017, trans girl played by cis boy. Even like in younger,
Just hire trans actors.
Just hire trans actors.
Just hire
There's
trans
plenty.
people. There's a lot of people. Yeah.
There's plenty.
And that's And that I was gonna point out how society and media, like, they use media to view trans women as just quote unquote men in dresses, and trans men as just butch lesbians, which,
not to mention non-binary people
just don't exist.
We just
apparently
don't get any movies. And we've got a few representations, none that I knew when I was actually looking through, because they're just so obscure or like hidden.
Yeah.
or not promoted because it's queer media.
Yeah, there's actually I have one example of a really good non-binary person in the show One Day at a Time, which I believe was a Netflix thing, and then Netflix canceled it, and then another network picked it up.
That's actually exactly what I was talking about with cool queer media that they then cancel.
Any queer media, Netflix is just like nope, or like other networks are just like, oh, you had 2 seasons, you're done.
House of Cards 2, here we go.
Oh God,
nothing wrong with that.
God. Ooh. But in One Day at a Time, there is a non-binary character who is the main love interest of the daughter of the family, and they use they them pronouns. Their name is Sid, and they are very cool, and they go into detail about their like identity and how they feel about being in a relationship. And it's really really well done, and you can tell that the writers took time to make sure that it was done respectfully, and really it was really good. It was well represented. And there's even an episode about Elena and Sid having a conversation about what term do we use? Do we use girlfriend, boyfriend? None of those feel good. And the one they decided on was significant other.
That just fills me with joy.
That's just very good. But yes, I think there are a couple examples of good non-binary representation, but definitely not as much.
I have more, but I've realized all of my examples are from like lesser like media instead of mainstream.
Yeah, because we only consume fun queer podcasts, because that's where we get most of our queer media in podcasts.
Big one, Stevani from Steven Universe.
Yes,
who is proudly and openly intersex and non-binary.
Yes.
There was that advertisement for something. Yeah. It was about like self-esteem though, and like. She had they had like an Instagram thing for Stevani, and
they had the intersex and non-binary flags on their Instagram.
Proudly.
And that's a really big TV show. That's very big and very popular.
We talked about Steven Universe last episode.
We've talked about a lot of Steven Universe. Steven Universe out there just doing amazing. Yeah.
I love Stevani. Also, you might be able to say more about this, but Juno Steele from the Penumbra podcast.
It's a pretty well-known podcast within just the podcast community. It's it's a story-based podcast, and the main character is non-binary and uses he/him pronouns, but also like one of his titles that he just kind of uses for himself is the lady,
like feminine titles, but
uses like he/him pronouns. It's very well done.
Wears dresses.
Dresses. Yes, it's just it's just very good.
Alex Fierro from Magnus Chase.
Also another big
read.
Thing.
I just happen to know this through osmosis. She is gender fluid and like is like very like prominent about like, yes, I like my gender switches, and I will tell you when that happens, and I would like you to respect my pronouns at that time. She usually uses she, her. She identifies as female mostly, but that can often switch, and then like the characters respect that, and it's good stuff.
And this is a book written by Rick Riordan, who wrote the Percy Jackson series, which is really big,
and who wrote lots of so much good diversity.
Definitely, and a lot of and I love how he did it, because he kind of started out with just look at this main character in this series. It's just this white kid who's just kind of boring, and then he just like brought in a bunch of other really cool diverse characters. Gotcha. Yeah. So he's good about like representing well.
And even with that first book, it dealt a lot with mental illness.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry,
So,
I know that's a whole different.
No, yeah.
But just so proud of him.
So I think there are a lot of good just like trans.
And my final one, Molly Mock Tea Leaf, who is a beautiful character from another podcast.
It's not a podcast; it's a live stream.
A live stream podcast.
Another D&D thing.
Critical Role. Molly Mock Tea Leaf is
really popular. No, about 30,000 people watch it every week. That's all I'm saying.
Unfortunately, the character did pass away in an episode, and was killed in an episode in battle, but it was unrelated.
Yeah,
he got better. Molly Mock is this character who does not like remember his memory, or doesn't remember his past, and is just kind of he's going through a lot on this fun adventure.
He's doing a lot, but he's very just kind of.
He's very just like kind and does not let that like make him bitter, and he's just open and good, and his whole philosophy is to like leave things better than you found them, and he does use he/him pronouns. I just wanted to clarify we're not misgendering, but but it's just proudly gender fluid. That was confirmed.
And bi,
bi,
just very well done.
Very bi,
extremely bi.
Look at he is the bi colors, I believe.
Yeah, he's purple. He's purple.
He's purple and has wears red and blue.
Yeah, it's very good.
And just love him.
Yeah.
And I think that's all on my list.
That's all we got for representation. I think that's all I got as well.
That's amazing.
Sorry, we just kind of vomited.
It's okay. We kind of went off there, which is, I mean, it's important. I think like having reflections of us in mainstream media is so critical to feeling like you're an okay person and you're like part of the world, and you're not just this like freak or outcast or stuff. I know when I was growing up there was so little, but whatever there was, it was like, okay,
I think
I got to see that.
I think that's why I focus on that as much as I do, because it's a positive thing, and it's thank God, this like representation. Okay, I can watch this and connect to this character on the screen and then really kind of see myself in that. And that just I think that's why we focus on media representation a lot, because it makes us feel good. It makes us feel seen.
Also more prominent in our lives than we think it is. And as someone who like creates media, as someone who is a content creator, I want to fill it with like queer things.
Yes,
absolutely immense. Like I write so much like fictional writing, and pretty much every good character is like queer in some way.
Hell yeah.
It's important. I think part of what you were saying about the way that that character was introduced in Shameless. I mean, it sort of like took it through a very natural thing. I think that he and God, I can't think of his name. The gay character, Ian. They start flirting.
Yeah.
And I think Ian doesn't have any idea that it's not a guy. And, you sort of watch the whole thing of how he discloses some of the awkwardness that happens, but it was very real. It wasn't like...
Yeah, it wasn't over the top, and it wasn't like... It was a very realistic portrayal of like the interaction that they might have. Really, I think it was really well done and well handled.
And that adds a whole nother level of it really being meaningful. I mean, more than just like, oh, here's this trans character. And that same actor is in The Fosters.
Yes, I was watching clips from that. And, that was also really
they did the same sort of thing where, he and the main lead...
forgot her name.
I forget her name. But she's like attracted to him, and then slowly sort of finds out, and
isn't any less attracted to him. That's the thing I really appreciate about like both like love interests from both shows. They're attracted to this character, and when they like find out he's trans, they're no less attracted to him because they were always attracted to him. So it's not like necessarily a barrier. It's not like, oh, he's trans, I have to get over that to love him. No, it's just I'm into he's trans.
I mean, in some ways it reflects more of the societal stuff that's just difficult to work through, not like it's not okay.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, we have to like struggle through this. I mean, in The Fosters, the younger brother is gay, and there's the whole like long thing of him sort of exploring that and coming out, and it's similarly well handled, I think.
Yeah.
And there's a third thing that actor's in, and I can't remember what it is.
Oh, I don't know. I have to look into that.
It may have just been like a movie.
I think I saw that on his Wikipedia. I'll look for it in a bit.
But I think handling of characters like that is like so important, because it's like we get to be, not only do we see ourselves, but we get to be real people.
Yeah. I think he was one of the... I think he may have been, and this is just me also maybe not looking for different stuff, but he's the first trans man that I've seen on screen,
honestly,
in like mainstream stuff.
I don't know.
And I'm almost 19 years old, and he was the first one that I've seen.
I cannot
personally
think of a first like openly queer character in my case, besides maybe Steven Universe, honestly.
I can't. It's hard for me to think of another trans man that's like...
Right?
In anything.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I hope there are some that we just haven't seen.
Yeah, and I think in lesser known media there's tons, and there's a bunch of a lot of queer
the big
actors.
list of characters I had, it's all like slightly more obscured media.
Yeah.
No, but at least that's there now.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, when I was younger, I like went to books. The people weren't in movies, weren't TV shows very much, but a lot of people started really writing good novels about real queer people.
Can I just like kind of like break off for a second?
Sure.
Avi and I, so we were in Portland recently, and they had a big library, and there are
Powell.
so many queer books.
And the nice
I bought
thing
a few.
Oh god, I don't want to think about how many I bought. They also had going through because we were in
First of all, they had a big queer section.
They had a queer section.
Big aisle, just specifically this is all queer. And then through the library, they had a very interesting organizing system. We recommend this book. And there was one I loved so much. It was called Trans Rights, but it was written writing.
Writing, trans rights.
And so it was
trans books. We were going through the young adult section, just looking at different novels and fiction stuff. And if a book had a queer character, they would put a little slip on it saying, oh yeah, this character has this character is gay, or this character is bi, or this character is trans. And it was just really helpful because I only consume queer media now. I'm not gonna buy a book about straight people
because I can't relate.
Because I cannot relate. And so it was helpful to have that, just kind of and it was nice to see how much there was in this big space. It made me really happy.
Made me happy thinking about it, and then sad that I'm not near it.
I know. I want to go back. I want to live in that bookstore.
Honestly. They're an amazing place.
Yeah. No, yeah. And Portland is so queer, and it's so nice.
The place we went right after that was a pizza shop that had pride flags in it.
It was so nice. Yeah, and then we ran into a really...
by accident. We didn't know it was a queer place.
Cool. And it's so nice to just see that around. And we also met a bunch of cool queer people in Portland while we were there. It was really nice. Yeah. I want more queer spaces.
We made a friend at another queer bookstore.
Yeah.
At another bookstore.
Oh man.
So important to be seen.
For sure.
So we got we're 4 minutes.
Gotcha.
I guess we can wrap this up with some resources.
We're gonna do some resources.
So I do not have many listed because unfortunately there are not a ton, and I know everyone here knows more, and so we're just gonna kind of combine that, maybe kind of open discussion, and maybe that's why it's important we need more resources and for things to be really out there. But so first of all, the Saga Club, Sexuality and Gender Alliance at College of the Redwoods. That is an open, safe space for any queer college students who are interested, especially in this time of, we've been talking about Trans Day of Remembrance. Any trans students that need to feel safe, that is a place that you can turn to.
And our next meeting we're looking to have them on Wednesday at noon.
Yeah, Wednesdays 12 to 1. The current meeting spot is undecided. Again, if you can message our Facebook group, I will happily direct you. We have a group chat that we're adding people to who are members, and so any information about meeting would be there. And
so contact Queer Things Radio.
Contact Queer Things Radio. That's at Facebook.
That's at the Facebook.
At the Facebook. I'm getting to that point where I can't talk, so I'm glad we're wrapping up because I'm just so tired. But yeah, that is a big one. And in the same vein, Gender Talk. That's Wednesdays 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. That's another safe space, but anyone can join that. Yeah, they're more of a... Whereas Saga's more kind of social and event planning, I think. Gender Talk's more educational, informational.
And yeah, I know they meet Wednesdays as well from 4
p.m. to 5 p.m.
And they're at the Art Building at CR. And if you have any other questions, you can also contact College of the Redwoods. They should have information about the meetings.
Gender Talk also has a Facebook page or Facebook group.
Yes,
that is a different thing.
Ask them about stuff.
And Queer Things in itself is kind of a queer resource. Our Facebook page is we try to share resources, and these episodes come up, and we're event planning. There's the Trans Day of Remembrance event we're trying to plan, and the Rainbow Gatherings, and so all of those things you can find there.
And yeah, if you just need kind of if you'd like directions to other different resources as well, we can be kind of a good directing.
Directory.
A directory.
Right, that's a good idea.
Just if you need something, if you need queer stuff, let us know and we can try to get back to you as helpfully as possible.
So I also wanted to mention that Open Door Community Health Center, there's very queer and trans friendly mental health as well as medical services, and that's always a good resource. And in the Arcata Clinic, there is a trans case manager now who also will probably be coming up to Del Norte at least once in a while, and hopefully doing some name and gender change clinics to help people with that, and to just help people with anything else that's going on in their lives that's trans or gender related. And there's a big push to really want to like support the queer community and the trans community and make good things happen. And I know a lot of times, we don't have a lot locally, but there's things that are maybe not too far away or that are accessible that aren't as obvious since they're not right in town. And, so we're going to post whatever we can. And if you have questions, email us or message us on Facebook. Or if you have other resources that you know of that we don't, send them to us so we can make sure that people find out about them.
I know. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, it's just, a lot of times, it's like something small and people think, oh, everybody knows that, but you don't.
No. Yeah. I know we at the last Redwood Pride we went to, I believe that was last month. Eureka has a lot of queer resources.
Has so many.
Eureka has a queer gym. They have
queer
like
dojo.
They have a queer dojo. They have a queer hour at a cafe that I'm planning on going to. And there's a lot of queer resources in Arcata and Eureka if you would like to check those out. I believe Redwood Pride has links to some of their stuff. And I believe there's another website called Queer Humbled that has more links to that. So I think, there are resources that are relatively close.
It's actually very important because I know a lot of people here move there. I plan on moving there like less than a year.
Yeah. There's also, I meant to point out, at the courthouse, if you're looking to legally change your name and gender, you can go to the courthouse and you can also get a fee waiver. If you're worried about how much the actual process will cost, you can get a fee waiver, and the lady in the law library will help you fill it out. And she's very lovely and very helpful, and she's very queer friendly.
The fee waiver is $3.
Fee waiver is $3. So
just don't go in there with no money. And
it's $3.
Have that awkward interaction.
But so they're also queer friendly and helping you kind of in the legal transition area of that. Yeah.
That is so awesome.
It's really, and she was so sweet and so nice about it. She was really cool. Because I went in kind of worried because I'm like, I don't know how to fill out this paperwork, but I also don't want to the mortifying ideal of being known. So I kind of went down and sat down with her, and she was like, "Oh yes, just fill this out, and that old name and the new name." And she was very, very lovely and very helpful. So, and she has office hours from Monday through Thursday, I believe, from like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So
good stuff.
Definitely go give her a visit.
So important. And so that's another good point. Even if you don't have like a resource, but somebody in the community that's helping out in some way, that's very friendly, that's awesome. We'd love to hear about it. We want to really help people feel a sense of community and safety, because the more visibility there is, the more oh, there's a queer person there and there's one there, it feels safer.
It really does. I felt more just kind of like, okay, I can exist here. I don't have to worry about this. There's a sense of community that happens when you think, oh yeah, that gay guy over there, or I know that person there. It's just it's
good stuff.
Yeah. You feel more connected to everybody in it. Yeah.
Makes a huge difference. Yeah. So next month is December.
Oh my God!
I think the first is the first Sunday.
Is it?
So we'll be starting off December very queer and ready to go.
Yeah.
Queer holidays, folks.
I could be super wrong. I don't have a calendar.
I have a calendar. Yes, the first is a Sunday.
Awesome.
Yes.
December
1st,
1st, our next show.
And we'll see what that'll be about.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Maybe we'll have queer holidays.
I was thinking.
Ooh.
Anyway, this is Queer Things Radio. You can find us on Facebook. You can email us at queerthingsradio@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Comments, ideas.
Re-listen to this lovely episode on our YouTube channel very soon.
YouTube. We have a channel.
We have a YouTube channel now,
as well as the KFUG website, where these are also posted podcast. Yeah.
And awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you all.
We did it.
We'll see you next month.
Okay, now we got to figure out how to get out of here.
We've got